It's a question that's back in the news after the front cover of Time magazine proposed that a child-free life was the secret to having it all. But are these women missing out, and is it fair to criticise them for their decision? When it comes to a life without children, stars like Helen Mirren, Cameron Diaz and Oprah Winfrey may well appear to have it all. But the recent headlines tell another story, that it's still taboo for women to admit that they don't want children. With the proportion of women without children having almost doubled since the 90s, now 1 in 5 45-year-olds remains childless. But is sacrificing a family for a life of freedom as selfish as critics claim?
We're in an age where you're lucky to make that decision, so I don't think they're particularly selfish at all. I think it's their right.
It's their decision, obviously, but for me, it's probably the best thing that's ever happened to me.
If they're happy with, as I say, not having a baby and not regretting it, then I think that's perfectly fine.
Well, with me now is Daynes, who says she's never wanted children and enjoys her life the way it is. And alongside her is mum of 6, Jo Brazier, who's presumably popped in for a bit of a sit-down with 6 children. I'm probably glad of the rest, but good to see both of you this morning. Now, Tara, first of all, why did you choose not to have children?
Well, it really wasn't a difficult decision for me because I never actually had those biological urges or any maternal instincts, so there was nothing for me to fight against. And actually, I feel really blessed in that I didn't have those because it's been hugely liberating. Because what I did have urges to do was to travel the world, to have a career, to spend my life, you know, indulging in all the things that I'm passionate about. And although I appreciate that none of those things would be impossible with children, certainly to do all of them and have children and to give children the time and attention that they would need would have been very, very difficult. So for me, it was a no-brainer.
Well, there you go, Jo. That's very simple. It is possible to travel the world, it's possible to do those things, but it's a heck of a lot harder. And she's made a very sensible choice, which has allowed her to pursue the things she's interested in.
That's fine. I mean, no, you're absolutely right, and in that level it's very, very simple. But also the reasons to have children are quite simple in some ways as well, just because it's a fantastic experience. And it's there for most of us to have, with really not as much effort as everybody pretends that it takes.
You've got 6. I'm exhausted at the thought of it. I mean, you didn't want children initially, did you?
I didn't, no, which is why, you know, I think I'm quite an interesting case because I actually got pregnant by accident. I don't know how you pregnant by accident at 36 and had to make a decision, having never wanted children, having never felt maternal or wanted any of those things. But at 36, I was faced with a decision, and I knew if I was going to have children, it would have to be then.
So do you think maybe you don't know what you're missing?
If I don't know what I'm missing, then I'm not really going to care, am I? But I know what I would miss if I did have children. I would miss all the things that I spend my time... I mean, there's not enough hours in the day for me as it is. But, you know, I'm very proud of my career. I'm a self-employed consultant, and I feel very passionate about what I do. I take a lot of pride in that. I travel the world for pleasure, and I've had some amazing experiences with the places that I've been to. It's a huge planet, it needs exploring. Plus, I actually, you know, one of the reasons I don't believe that women who don't have children are selfish is because I actually have a lot more time, energy and money to donate to charities. I do a lot of voluntary activities, as well as all the things that I just enjoy in terms of, you know, hedonistic activities as well. Theatre, cinema, arts, culture, history, architecture. There's so many things that I spend my time doing. So I know I would miss all of those if I had to spend my time with kids.
And a lot of women watching us are agreeing with you, Marion Wood, said it's much more selfish to have lots of children when you can't afford them and expect the rest of us to pay for them. You've made a choice for the way you want to live your life. But do you have negative reaction from some people, or at least... right, OK, tell me about that.
Yes. Absolutely. I don't get negative reactions from women who have the same point of view as myself.
No, quite.
Funnily enough, it's always from women who do have children. And there's a little bit of me that's thinking, is it me that you're actually trying to convince, or is it yourself? You're trying to persuade yourself that actually you're not missing out by this. So yes, we do get the selfish argument, which is irrational and emotive. And also people saying, but, you know, you're female, therefore you should have children, which I think is outrageous because it basically negates anybody who's childless through circumstance as a human being.
And we've had lots of calls from those people, and we're not talking about people who can't have children. We know there's a lot of you that desperately find yourself in this position. It's the choice factor that we happen to be discussing right now. But do you think she might regret the decision, Jo?
I think she might. I think she might. I think the problem with the decision to remain childless is that most people make that decision when they're in their prime, and I think they make sort of an assumption that they're always going to be in their prime, that they're always going to be travelling the world, it's always going to be fantastic. And in your VT, it was lovely, people walking along the beach. I didn't see anybody in their 70s or their 80s.
So you're thinking have children so they can look after you?
Nobody said that having children was an entirely selfless act. I mean, you know, having children is a very complex thing, and some of the reasons, I mean, you won't be surprised to hear that I'm often accused of being very selfish for having so many children. But no, of course, it's a complex area, but of course, part of your reason for having children is that you are looking forward to that time when you're not in your prime, and actually you can't get up the steps of an aeroplane unassisted. So, you know, I don't deny the fact that I'm thinking about my dottery old age, and at least one of the 6 helping me up the airplane steps.
Yeah. Well, we have been running a poll on our website about this because we wanted to know what you thought, and we've asked you, are women who choose not to have children selfish? And you are overwhelmingly on Tara's side, with 91% saying no, you're not selfish, and only 9% saying yes, you're very pleased about that. Perhaps some of them will help you up the airline steps that Joe was talking about. Really interesting to hear both your perspectives. Thanks very much for coming in to talk to us this morning on the subject of having children. On tomorrow's Daybreak, we're going to be talking